Untouchable, uncrushable. Untouchable, uncrushable. Untouchable, uncrushable. Untouchable, uncrushable. Down, face down. You know the routine.
Hello, my name is Satie Gossett, and welcome to another episode of Pan and Zoom, where we talk to creatives about being creative. I'm with a wonderful guest, Mitch Marchand, producer, writer, stand-up comedian, and he's going to let us know what's it like getting the juice.
It's a beautiful thing. I fortunately was anointed by Ernest Dickerson many moons ago on the set of said film, Juice. And the funny thing, though, is that I got that role kind of like by accident. It was like a happy accident.
Well, can you talk about that? Because for those that don't know, he was in the dope film Juice with Tupac Shakur and Omar Epps, directed by Ernest Dickerson. And, you know, he basically had the last line of the movie, which is in hip-hop infamy.
Yes.
And, you know, hearing about how that came to pass, I'm fascinated. I want to know.
Well, I mean, you know, the thing was like Juice at the time when it was like when everybody was auditioning, it was like one of the biggest films in New York City. And I mean, everybody, like, you know, when you're sitting there in the waiting room, it's like you're sitting there like next to Redman and DOS Effects and, you know, Tupac, obviously, you know, like all these big time rappers mixed in with every young black actor. I'm talking about Donald Faison, you know, obviously the guys that ended up being cast. It was just like, you know, everybody wanted a piece of this movie. And I had auditioned for the role of one of the main guys, Steele. And, you know, Ernest and I had a history. This dates back to when I was 12 years old, because I was an intern on Do the Right Thing. And so the casting director knew who I was. And although I didn't get the role of Steele, which I don't think anybody could have played it better than Jermaine, but, you know, Ernest was just like, listen, I want you in this movie. I'm going to try to find a way to put you in this movie. So subsequently they had this pool hall scene in I think the first 30 minutes of the movie. And at the time, Omar and I were working on writing scripts, and Ernest knew. And he's like, listen, I want you guys to write your scene, and I'll set the cameras around it, and I'll get inserts and pickups around the scene. And that ended up, Omar and I literally took our side pages and wrote down the scene about me buying a mixtape from him. And that's technically speaking the first thing I've ever written in my life that made it on film was in Juice. And then maybe, I want to say maybe 6 months later, the movie had already been done and they were doing pickup shots. And I remember because it was kind of funny because Omar and I were hanging out that day. It was a Saturday during the day. And we were probably drinking a couple of 40s, just hanging out, being, you know, young adult teenage boys. And we got a call from the casting director, like, hey, Ernest, did you guys come back to Harlem to shoot the scene? I was like, we're like, tonight? They're like, yeah, come tonight. I was like, what? He said, well, I said, what am I going to wear? And it was like, well, miss, just wear what you have on. And I was like, okay, cool. And Omar will have your clothes. And we drove in Omar's cars back up to Harlem, back up to the rooftop. And that's where we filmed the You Got the Juice Now scene. The funniest thing about that was Omar and I were a little toasty. So like this.
Does that why he dropped Tupac?
No. I think that might have been, that was a plot twist, but no. What the funny thing was, like this, the one that you see may have been out of the mini tapes we took. That may have been only one of the 3 that were usable. Because Omar and I had like this bad case of the giggles.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because it was
the context.
It was just so weird and so strange to us that we really just could not stop laughing. And sometimes it was my fault, and sometimes I would get through it, and then he would laugh.
Well, that stuff is contagious. If you ever get,
oh yeah,
it's spreads like
it's just like a sneeze. You know, you start sneezing, everybody's sneezing. But that's what makes me laugh about that scene, is because now it's kind of has this cult following.
It has a cult following, and I'm sure cats come up to you and say, You got the juice, or you got
all the
juice?
time. My kids hate it.
Really?
I mean, because they have.
They get teased at school?
No, they don't get teased. I mean, now it's cool. Like back when I did the movie, it wasn't that cool. But now it's like it's developed this lore, and like hip hop is taking it into a different direction. But like the year after Juice came out, I was working at the mall,
Right.
and trying to sell. I was working at JW Jeans West, and I was selling like 5 for $10 socks and money mustard colored suits. And it wasn't really cool when people would notice me from the movie, like, yo, why you working here? Wasn't you in a movie? Like, oh, you felt like I had fallen off in a year. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like the rags to riches story that I thought it was going to be, or not even thought. I just was trying to, that Juice money had ran out really quickly, and I had to, pay some rent.
The juice was squeezed.
Yeah, the juice, we squoze all the juice out of all this.
Wow.
I'm all right. I get to make up words.
I think you did here on Panazoo. We just created new words.
Squoze. I love squoze. That's one of my favorite non-words.
Hashtag squoze.
Yeah, squoze.
So you said that, you got the opportunity because of Ernest Dickerson,
Yeah.
Since he was 12.
Yeah, since I was 12.
Since you were 12.
And
then you got the opportunity to be an intern on Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
It's a classic film.
Yeah.
Talk about that experience, just being on set and how it kind of lit the fire under you.
I mean, it was interesting because I had been a child actor pretty much since I was like 8 years old, and doing commercials and doing theater, off-Broadway kind of stuff. But then like this movement came up under me with Spike and the Black Pack with Robert Townsend and Keenan, and and I was always an avid reader. I remember this.
Matty Rich?
Yeah, Matty Rich, all those guys. And I just felt so in love with the other side of the camera. And I had already kind of started thinking about ways to develop myself as a writer. And I kind of wanted to be like Spike, like a filmmaker who wrote himself in the movies, but he made the movie, and he had to be responsible for not just the vision, but not just his character, but all the characters. And this opportunity came. A friend of mine was working a PA on the movie. They were about 3 or 4 weeks out in pre-production. Came to my house just hanging out after work one day, and I was like, "Yo, are they looking for interns?" And he said, "Yeah." So the next day I went and I met with one of the unit production managers, and they were like, "Well, how old are you?" And it was like, "Because to be an intern, you got to be 13." So I was like, "Yeah, I'm 13." And they said, "Well, you need a permit, a working permit." I said, "Okay, well, I'll fill out the application. I definitely want to do it. I'll come back tomorrow and bring my worker's permit." So I go home and I tell my mom, I'm like, "Mom, I have an opportunity to work on a Spike Lee movie." And that's all. She was like, "What?"
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Yeah, I could be an intern, but I need you to get me a work permit. And I can only get one if I'm 13. So she did a little careful accounting with my birth certificate.
Oh, wow.
And did some shifting. And because she knew if anything, I would be out of trouble for the summer, And that was like the quite practically the best summer job I ever had. I mean, I got to be around all those cast members from the film. I got to, be around Spike. I got to be around, one of my writing mentors, Kenny Buford. He went on to be a writer on Martin and do a Thin Line Between Love and Hate. I got to work with Sam. I did a play with Sam.
Oh, wow.
Off Broadway, but then working with him in that capacity. I mean, it's like Do the Right Thing was and to this day has always been such like a fraternity of people. And I was the youngest person on the set. Even Randy, the first AD, they used to call me Webster.
Oh.
So like when I was doing a lockup, and they were like, "Webster, go for Webster." I'm like, "Go for Webster." I had to that was my nickname on set.
What's your 20 Webster?
Yeah, what's your 20 Webster? I'm like, "Go for Webster," But it was like, and I used to go to dailies at night. I just soaked all of that in.
So you got to see the process from soup to nuts.
The entire process. And I mean, they were like all big brothers and big sisters in the sense that everybody kind of looked out for me. They knew I was, they knew I was younger than I was, but they also like kind of fostered that belief in me that, you know, okay, if you really want to do it, then you're going to have to do the work. And I learned that. And, you know, subsequently, I think how, you know, life works out. The year that Spike won his first Oscar, I wrote on that Oscars.
Wow.
And
You guys get to.
yes, he was the first person I saw in the green room.
Wow.
I had just got back there and I was walking with the script department, and he walks in. He goes, "What's up, Money?" I'm like, "What's up, man?" And I really watched him because if you remember, he had this long speech. I watched him write it right there, and he wrote it in the green room.
Wow.
And that's also Ruthie Carter, who's a longtime friend of mine. She won.
Condom designer.
Yeah, she won her first Oscar that night too.
Panther?
Yeah, for Black Panther. And I got a chance to, like, literally, I ran to her, like, I left the green room. I said, "I'll be right back." I had to go give her a hug. And she was like, "Did you want to touch it?" And I was like, "Yeah, can I touch it?" And I just touched the Oscar. And I just thought that was like a wonderful, beautiful, full circle moment for me to be able to get my start in behind the scenes work with that crew of people, and then to watch them achieve that on a night where I was having a really big achievement being a Black writer on the Oscars. So it's just great how life works out.
It is, and it's full circle, and it also kind of attests to relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And because imagine if you had done a poor job or were a jerk on that set,
Yeah.
then that continuity would be broken.
Yeah, for sure.
That being said, after Juice,
Mm-hmm.
and you know you worked at the mall, when did you decide to go west and seek your fortune?
Well, it wasn't actually trying to seek my fortune. I was supposed to come out to L.A. and then the plan was Marlon was going to fly me out so I could basically do a cameo role for Don't Be a Menace to South Central.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sean was supposed to fly me back.
Okay.
When I got here, I was told that, haha, we got you. Now you're not leaving. And we're about to do a show called The Wayans Brothers, so you might as well just stay out here. And so I came out here with like two and a half weeks worth of clothes. I stumbled into an apartment. I started working on set as an on-set PA.
What a wonderful trap.
It was a beautiful trap. I mean, it's like, if you're going to get stiffed, at least get stiffed into success. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
Yeah. So it was a great thing. And then I got a chance to be an on-set PA. You got to watch rehearsals. And to me, that's another thing that really strengthened me as a writer, because I got to see what didn't work. And I didn't even know what I was doing. You know, I just ended up like, "Hey, Marlon," you know, and because Marlon's my friend, I could talk to the star of the show, like, "Yo, why don't you try this?" Or "This might work if you do this." And I didn't know, I didn't even know that I was effectively pitching. I didn't know what that word meant.
Right.
I was that green. And so that led to me, you know, really, really pushing, as they say, pushing my pen and getting more into the writing aspect of.
You think the context would have been different if they weren't your peoples? Like, if,
you know, like knowing Marlon and Sean, they're not those kind of people.
Gotcha.
So even if I think of they're the way they treat me, they treat everybody. And I mean, we've all come under the schooling of the Godfather, as I call him, Keenan. So Keenan has taught us all how to, you know, treat people. And this is basically just be your genuine self. And I think knowing them the way I do, the way they've treated people who they didn't know the same way they treated me, I think that it would have probably been the same way. It might have maybe took me it might have been a little harder to get up that flagpole, but I think I would have still been able to, you know, make some headway there.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So from being a PA, how did you make yourself into the writer's room? Because you do a couple things, you know, you're a writer, producer, and you do stand-up.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you about, you know, and a lot of people out there want to know, what's the process of being in a writing room, breaking story, coming up with ideas?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the process, you know, depends upon what room you're in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like learning on the Wayans Brothers was different from, you know, let's say my situation with the Upshaws.
Okay.
And I basically with the Wayans Brothers, with Marlon and Sean, they're very joke intense. And so I was in the rooms. I got a chance to break stories, learn how to break stories, learn how to, you know, fix and answer notes and once we had network run-throughs and things like that. But on tape nights and on, with the crowd there, we used to have like a on-set punch-up team, which is like me and 4 of the dudes. And our job was, if the joke didn't get a laugh from the audience, we all had to have 5 options.
Okay. You had to understand the context of what the joke was, and then
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you had to have 5 options to pitch, and that's 5 jokes between me and 4 other people.
So that's like 20 jokes
Exactly.
at the ready.
And they need it, and while everything's being reset, the props are being put back, and everybody's going back to 1. Basically, that's our time to pitch. And I didn't know that it was very difficult for me. I struggled in the beginning.
Why do you think that was?
Because it was just so rapid.
Okay.
I mean, it's happening in the midst, like you.
And so you had to get yourself up to speed on come up with the
I had to get
information.
Speed. And I at the time I was still green. I didn't trust myself.
Gotcha. I know that's key.
Yeah, I didn't trust myself.
Yeah.
And so, but then eventually I got really good at it, and I think that only having that experience with the Wayans brothers, had I had it on I probably wouldn't have had that on any other show. And I think that benefited me, because then when I started jumping into award show world and you're doing live television, and my first BET Awards, the first celebrity I ever met backstage was Halle Berry.
Ooh.
Halle Berry. Yes. Halle Berry. And I'm tripping out.
Starstruck.
I'm starstruck,
Sweating.
fanboy, but I'm being as New York cool as I possibly can.
What you like to sub?
Yeah, I played it real cool until she walked away.
Uh-huh.
But then she was extra cool too. And like, I think she kind of felt my nervousness of like, she diffused it. And I remember she put her arm on my shoulder and she was like, well, how can we fix this? And in my mind, because I had that training with Marlon and Sean, I had 5 options in my head that I hadn't even written them down. And that has been such an impactful skill that I've been able to kind of share with some of the other writers that have come under my tree, to be able to turn to the drop of a dime, but the pressure is happening because it's not just a live taping, it's a live show. Like Halle Berry I only have 3 minutes with her. So we got to get this fixed, or she's got to go out there and say something she doesn't like.
Wow. Well, did the Wayans opportunity help you parlay into getting into award shows? Because that seems like an interesting turn.
I think the thing about, my story is that, I've always been very passionate about what I do. And I've always worked really hard. I learned that through Keenan, Marlon, and Sean, Damon, the Wayans family. And I think that impacted me to the point where I may not have always been the funniest person in the room, but I wasn't going to get outworked. That was always like my motto was, like I will stay as long as I need to be. I know it's 2 a.m. Everybody's out of gas. I got gas for everybody. And I've always tried to carry myself like that. And I think it worked for me because, one gig kind of led to another gig. I haven't had an agent in my career.
Mm-hmm.
I just got an agent like 2 years ago. I've never had an agent.
Well, work begets work. If they see you do a good job, they say, hey, let's use Mitch for this because he brings it.
Yeah, and then people call, they're like, and that's how it happened. Like the first year I did the BET Awards, that very same summer, I did the MTV VMA Awards. And that's because the VMA producers saw a bit that, and they were like, they thought Jesse wrote it. And Jesse was like, no, Mitch Marchand wrote that. And that's what got me. I like literally went from one gig to the next in one summer just because they liked something that I had come up with.
Now, is it all kind of uniform when you work on award shows, or do there differences between shows?
No, I mean, I think it's like, it's organized bedlam is the best way to put it. It's like, I always like, like you're always working towards that date.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, when you're a month out, then you can pitch the most farcical. This is never going to happen, but I think this is just funny. And especially when I first started, I always wanted to be that guy, like, you know, I'm going to show you how funny I am. But then I learned to be funny and practical.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's funny because I have such a great relationship with Deborah Bird, who has been a talent producer for years on the BET Awards. And like, she's a really, really good friend of mine now. It's to the point where now I don't remember how much I used to hate her. Like, I used to hate Deborah because she was the dream killer. We'd have this great idea that we wanted to do, and we'd go in all excited. And Jesse would be on board. And at the time, John Cassette, rest in peace, that's back even before it was Jesse Collins, it was Cassette Productions. And John would be so excited about it. And he was like, okay, go tell Deborah. And I'm like, fuck, I don't want to go tell Deborah because she's going to kill it. She's like, and Deborah like never raises her voice. She's always like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
What was the criteria for it not happening?
It was just because sometimes it was hilarious and funny, but it was just like you're not gonna get like.
Did it cross a line?
I never pitched, but like for instance, like Michael Jackson and Prince do a breakdance battle. Like it was like things like that,
Yeah.
Which is like funny on its as a premise,
Yeah.
But it was never gonna happen, you know, because you had to first write the bit, then you had to get her to get you on the phone with the publicist. Like there was just so many,
food, right?
Yeah, all the things that. And it's funny, one year we all got so frustrated. I remember this is the year I was writing with Robin Thede, James Davis, a bunch of us. And we had a jar, like a big fishbowl jar. And it was like all the ideas that didn't make it.
And it was full by the probably.
But like we start, let's say, because normally the BET Awards like the last Sunday in June. So we always start like that May before Memorial Day, that last week of May. By the time we got to the end of that, before we moved to the venue, it was full.
Wow.
Yeah, it was full.
So how similar is the sitcom writer's room to an award show writer's room?
Completely different.
Completely different?
Completely.
But the skills you learned from sitcom writing aided you in...
Yeah.
And the speed joke.
Yeah, and vice versa. I mean, I think one thing is like the universal thing is like when you're doing like for instance, like after the run through on a sitcom and you're doing punch-ups, like you know the setup already, or sometimes you may have to change the setup to fit your punch, but you know what's happening, you know. So I think the speed, like, you know, because sometimes a note session could be 20 minutes, sometimes it could be an hour, but in between that time I'm in my office and sometimes I'm making notes while I'm on the floor, but then I kind of try to get concise, and sometimes I'll have pitches that I think is funny, but I'm like, this I won't even pitch them out loud because they're just not going to work. Whereas with award show writing, especially when I kind of took on the role of a head writer, it was, you know, I always wanted to like let the room have their say, but then as we get closer to showtime, it's
you kind of got it.
Yeah, I kind of got to like, okay, this is what we should do, or this is a direction, or give me a joke that you think works in this lane. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As opposed to like we're casting a wide net. You know, we cast a wide net a month out. When we're a week out, we'll start drill things.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to kill your babies, as they say.
It hurts. Sometimes I know when I got to cut something. Like I'm talking about like movie script, television script. Sometimes I'll just like, you know, you got the copy, the blue all around it. And I'll just sit there and read it one more time.
I just like, I'll put it in a drawer somewhere. It may make sense somewhere.
And I'll just sit there and look at it like, man.
And have a drink and then.
I love you. I just thought you were just the perfect joke to go to an act break, but you're gone. It's got to go.
Until I see you later.
Yeah. Or if I could put you in something else.
And then sometimes that happens.
Yeah, sometimes it does. Sometimes.
Talk about the experience of being nominated for an Emmy for the John Lewis. You know, did you get to meet Mr. Lewis?
I did.
Okay.
I got to meet him. Wow. I want to say about 2 years prior to his passing. I got to meet him at the Oscars.
Okay.
He was a presenter. And I believe that was the first Oscars I had ever done. And I got to meet him. And I remember I just revere John Lewis. I've been I'd been raised on John Lewis and Dr. King, obviously. And I remember, and I'm getting chills even remember when I met him backstage at the green room, because I walked over to him and I said, Congressman Lewis, is there anything I can get you? I'm Mitch, I'm one of the writers. I have your copy here. Is there anything to get you? And he said, brother, could you give me a glass of water? And I had never went to get anybody anything, not even my wife, as quick as I went to go get John Lewis some water.
Wow.
And I got to meet him. I got to shake his hand. I got to thank him. And I was, obviously very much affected by his passing. And I wanted to, it's funny because writing award shows, you kind of always have that, okay, I got this for the in memoriam in the tuck kind of situation. And then I remember getting a call, and this is during COVID. And I was literally on the set doing a commercial with Marlon for some phone, I forget, some Samsung phone ad we were doing. We were on set. And Jesse Collins gives me a call and said, hey, listen, so I'm doing this thing with CBS for commemorating John Lewis's life. And it's Oprah, it's Gayle King, it's Tyler Perry, it's Brad Pitt, and Trevor Noah are hosting each segment. I was like, okay, well, who's the team? He said, you're the team. Boom. And I remember having to write these segments and sending it and getting very little notes. And then I knew they were filming. I was like, well, Oprah didn't have any notes. And they were like, no, Oprah didn't have any notes on what you wrote. And I was just like, I was in such a zone to the point that, it kind of was like a little, because I'm sitting in the house. I'm in COVID. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I remember that one of the executive producers, a friend of mine who I work with on a lot of the award shows, called me while they were editing. And he said, hey, listen, man, I know I give you a lot of shit, because we always go back and forth. He says, I really want you to know you did a fantastic job with this show. Like, you're going to get an Emmy nomination.
That's dope.
And I was like, get the hell out of here. And then I remember the night before the Emmys, real quick, my wife and I were literally getting into bed. And it's rare that we're getting to bed at the same time. We're getting into bed like, the sitcom couple. And she's like, babe, the Emmy nominations are going to come out. You're going to get an Emmy nomination. I was like, no, girl, go to bed. I was like, shut up and go to bed. And the next morning, that same person that called me, Eric Cook, Eric sent me a text, and it just said, hell yeah. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then he sent me a screenshot of my name as a nominee for the John Lewis special.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think we're getting close to running out of time. Any words of wisdom that you want to impart to people?
I mean, I guess my word of wisdom is something I said the other day that I want to share with people. It's like, when you look at a writer like me, or even someone who's infinitely more successful than me, like Issa or Shonda, I think the important thing to remember is to fight past the no's. No's are, I just got a no today.
Right.
And that has not taken me out of my zone and wanting to create and make things and develop characters and bring things to life. So I think the no is just a place where you're being called upon to be bigger than that idea. So create something else and do it with the same love and same passion. Take the pain of the no, but use that pain and channel it into something that is even more powerful, and you'll benefit in the end.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. All right. And with that, I want to say thank you to Mr. Mitch Marchand. We squoze every minute of this interview.
Good squoze.
See, it's a good squoze. It's a wholesome squoze.
Very good use of squoze, too.
Hey, I have my moments. My name is Satie Gossett. This has been another episode of Pan and Zoom. And until then, keep on filming.
Untouchable, uncrushable.